Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Ingrid Fenn, and I'm excited to welcome you. This webinar is especially meaningful for me and for all of us at SIREAS. It marks our 10-year anniversary. Makes me very proud. And over the past decade, we've had the privilege of working alongside many organizations like the ones represented here, helping to navigate change, reimagine partnerships, and unlock value. And today's conversation couldn't be more timely. Our industry continues to evolve at a rapid pace, advances in technology, changes in the way that we work, and the growing need for resilient, future-ready portfolios, all of which demand bold strategies and fresh perspectives. And we're fortunate enough to have an outstanding panel of leaders with us to share their viewpoints on priorities, partnerships, and how they think about value creation. So thank you for joining us for this milestone moment. And let's get started by introducing each of our impressive panelists and leaders here today. So why don't we start with you, Adam?
Thank you, Ingrid. Really happy to be here today, participating in this really exciting session. I'm really excited to hear about what everybody is doing and the different priorities everybody has. So I'm Adam Hoy. I look after the global real estate team at PepsiCo. I've been here for a little over 2 months now. Previously with the GSK, where I looked after facilities real estate projects for the global portfolio. Spent about 25 years looking after various aspects of corporate real estate portfolios for large multinational companies. And again, really glad to be here today.
Bill?
Hi, I'm Bill Cooper. I'm the Regional Director for Bank of America, overseeing the Northeast and Canadian markets. All aspects of real estate we manage within those, so it's admin and retail. Been with the bank for about 7 years, and previous to that, I've worked with other end users and also service providers as well. So I have a good mix of different types of services that are out there.
Terry?
Good morning and congratulations on your anniversary. That's terrific. Terry Melzer, Global Senior Director at Bristol Myers Squibb. I've been there the last 3 years, actually last week. We are 40 plus sites that I currently look after in North America and Europe, focusing on our strategic relationships with our vendor partners, ensuring that we're bringing the best we can to our end users. Previous to coming to Bristol Myers Squibb, I spent the last 30-ish years on the service provider side, running all aspects of real estate for customers like many of you on this phone call. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some knowledge. Thank you.
And Faye?
Good morning, everyone. Great to be here. Congrats, Ingrid, on your anniversary. Looking forward to sharing and to learn. So Faye Martin, Vice President for Global Services and Operations at Cisco, British national living in the US. I've been here 10 years, in the US 12 years, but in the industry for a very long time. I have an FM background. It's really where I have grown up in the corporate real estate industry. But my team are responsible for services and ops, but also for the overall execution of what we do as a function to our clients and driving value for our businesses.
Great. Well, thank you all for those introductions. It's really inspiring to hear the breadth of experience and perspectives that we have around the table today. So I'm excited for this conversation as well. And despite managing very different environments, and you all certainly do that, you do share a critical focus in aligning strategy to best support your businesses and empowering your workforces and, fueling growth for your organizations. And the pace of change in our industry really only heightens these challenges, and market dynamics and shifting expectations within the business are really forcing leaders like yourself to continually reassess priorities. And that's where I really wanted to begin the conversation today. And Faye, if we could start with you, what are your top corporate real estate priorities heading into 2026? And How would you say, or how has your real estate strategy evolved in response to the business or workforce or market dynamics over the past 12 to 18 months?
Thank you, Ingrid. I mean, I think what we have discovered at Cisco, and certainly coming out of the pandemic, and I know that still seems like a long way away now, but it's continuing to influence our thinking about the portfolio. So we've really taken a purpose-driven, business-driven approach, classifying what we do, where we need to compete, how we need to operate, and aligning our real estate strategy to that. So whether it's proximity to our customers, proximity to talent, major centers where energy is, if we're developing major R&D facilities and so on. So drawing that straight line between where we're situated and how that drives value for our businesses. And I think, so that's sort of priority number one, that continuous, we're all sort of thinking about, do we have the optimized portfolio? Are we in the right places? Where do we need to be next? And getting in front of that, making sure that we have that sort of deep understanding of where the businesses are heading. We're in the long game in real estate, so we have to sort of have that sort of deep planning to bring that about in a timely way. And that's sort of then thinking about that purpose-driven. Our next area of focus has really been rethinking what the space is intended to do. Who are we supporting? How do people do their best work? And how do we make sure that we're creating a more customized environment for all the different people and the different work styles across the Cisco ecosystem? And I think thirdly, Ingrid, and I'm sure we will talk about this, is wrestling with choice. I know many of my peers and people on the webinar today will be thinking about return to office, magnets, mandates, what's the right approach, what will lead to success. So for us at Cisco, we really decided to focus on choice, the office being a magnet, rather than sort of having a strict company mandate. And that brings its own challenges, and we can get into some of those a little later. But, we've really been focusing on how do we support leaders when we are developing and providing spaces. How do we help them activate that space to serve their business needs, whether that's connecting and bringing teams together, developing talent and skills and so on, kind of creating that community feel and so on.
And you manage across a global landscape. Do you find those strategies to be differing depending on region or the countries that you're working with?
Absolutely. And I think that level of variability is part of the challenge. It's extremely dynamic. So we're in, 80 countries, 300 locations, lots of cultural variations, and then different work settings within those cultural variations. So it's a complex map that we're continuing to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. Terry, I'd love for you to, expand on that and talk a little bit about your priorities as well. And also, how you balance, we just talked about that global consistency, some local flexibility within your strategy.
Yeah, thank you. Like Faye, you're servicing the business, right? And so you need to determine what's works for them and those individuals so that they can, in our case, get medicine to patients. It's the balance of global and my concern many times is driving that consistency. We've just undertook and continue to look at the way we do business, right? And so to be able to standardize globally where possible, we found we gain a lot of efficiencies that way, right? However, we also need to be flexible and adaptable to those local needs. We certainly understand, the business is different in countries, but driving that global consistency, providing the guidelines, certainly in critical areas, safety, compliance, technology platforms, branding, those are all important elements that will ensure the alignment and drive those efficiencies. But really at the same time, we've got to empower those local teams to tailor where it makes sense for them, like workplace design, or the amenities may be different. Operational practices, you want to, again, drive some of that consistency where you can to ensure you're getting the right uptime and ensuring that the business can run, but also allowing some of those regional cultural things. Obviously, regulations are different around the world, so you have to meet those regulations. And then there is some, employee experience or employee preferences, as Faye said, where you're trying to get people back to the office, right? And not through a mandate, but through an experience. So we want to ensure that everyone comes to work and can be their best selves. And it's about, I'm keen on communication, right? We need to ensure we're talking to each other. It's a big tent in a big world, right? But we have to make the time, whether it's 10 o'clock at night or 5 a.m. in the morning, we have to ensure that we're talking to everyone around the globe, and listening to what their feedback is and finding opportunities to improve it, to ensure we're sharing best practices, and to really, I say this all the time, inspect what I expect. If I give you a global standard, I want to make sure, one, you understand it, but two, you're following it, so that, again, we can be the best for our organization and drive medicines to patients and profit to stakeholders.
Bill, can you expand on this? And, obviously the bank has a massive global portfolio and you kind of operate through different regions. How are you balancing those consistencies with flexibility?
Yeah, so we operate almost exactly how Terry just described it. Like, we have global processes and they're very complex, but it's trying to ensure that we have consistency with governance and space metrics and design standards and technology, right? So as a globe, we're operating in a consistent method, but the local teams have the ability to adapt and be flexible and react to what's going on locally in order to execute on these projects. We need to make sure that we are competitive in the marketplace and able to deliver when things change locally, and not get kind of brought down by the global process aspect of everything. But yeah, local is definitely a key in order to get the projects across the line.
So, Adam, we spoke a lot about strategic priorities, and from your perspective, what market trends are you watching most closely right now and that are supporting your strategy? Is it around labor, AI, flex space? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I'll take the easy one. AI, I think, is the first one, right? I think we're all talking about AI and how we can incorporate it into what we do. So I think that's definitely one. If I think about the services that we deliver and the outputs that we generate and outcomes we generate for our enterprises, being better and quicker to deliver those is definitely key. I think working with our partners in understanding how we innovate together and how we ensure that we're taking advantage of this, super fast-paced change in what technology can bring. I think, I don't know if we're quite where we need to be yet. We've talked a lot about this over the last couple of years, but in talking with other occupier service providers, et cetera, I'm not sure as an industry we're really seeing a lot of fruits come out of using AI, maybe bits and pieces. But I think, I'm still waiting for that big, thing to come where, yeah, here's what, what AI can do within a corporate real estate environment, whether it's portfolio planning, facilities management, whatever it may be. So I think that would be one. I think the second one I would mention, and, I don't know if this is a trend, but others have talked about it on the call, the experience metrics within our portfolio. And any occupier now, we're really focused on experience, where 5 to 10 years ago it wasn't something that, it's obviously something we talked about within our teams, but at least in the places I was at over the last 15 years or so, I think it ramped up post COVID in terms of our ability to really have serious experience conversations with executives, which has been great. So I think, whether you call it a trend, you call it the direction that we're headed in terms of what we bring to our portfolios and to our enterprises, I'd say that's the second one. And I think the melding of the two, right? So how do we take advantage of AI to, increase employee experience, and then it becomes iterative. So those are a few of the things that I'm seeing, Ingrid.
Yeah, and just to dig into that point a little bit around AI, and we're starting to touch on it, but I don't know if, we're still waiting to see what it's going to look like or who's going to come up with something that, as a client, you can start to use. Does anyone else have any experience? Is it that perspective the same, that we're hearing our partners start to talk about what they're thinking about and what they're building? Or are you developing AI internally within your own company that's starting to support your portfolio? I'm interested to hear if anyone else had anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in. Like so at the bank, we've just started to roll out like Copilot and things like that, which it's coming out fast, and I think it'll make a big impact. And no one really knows where it's going to end up, but it's very interesting and fascinating to see how quickly things are moving along the AI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're using it to drive all aspects of our business, right? And to Bill's point, it is the speed with which it enables decisions is amazing. There's still that fear of is it real, and you have to obviously check and double check what you're getting, the responses, but we are embracing it 100%. I mean, I've never seen an initiative move so fast as bringing in AI and utilizing it for a lot of the decisions we make within our organization.
That's great. Anyone else? Great. Well, so we talked about priorities and certainly how strategies are evolving, and I think AI is going to be one that we'll continue to see moving rapidly and impacting really all aspects of the real estate, cycle, I guess, when you think of from the strategic perspective and how we think about where we should be, right through to how we're managing our spaces and the amenities that we're providing to our employees. And I think, Adam, you already alluded to this, but of course, typically none of this is happening in a vacuum, and our service providers are really playing a critical role in helping corporate end users with this execution. And so I wanted to shift a little bit to partnerships and get your perspective on what those service provider partners, sorry, are bringing to the table. And I apologize, I'm losing my voice here. And so Adam, maybe we'll start with you. What role do your service providers play in really helping you to execute strategy? And I know you're new, relatively new, and getting your feet wet still at Pepsi. So happy for you to talk about it there, or just general experience.
Yeah, I think general, right? So being an occupier for a long time, and wherever you cut the line, right? So we all have outsourcing lines that we cut, the internal and external teams. The places I've been, upwards of 90 to 95% of the people that deliver our services come through our partners. So it's critical in terms of the role that our partners play. I think over time, what I've seen is that the involvement in the strategy, we're depending more upon our key partners to help build and frame out that strategy, where in past cycles, again 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe that would have all been internal, and then we would go in and look for third parties to execute on that. But for me, absolutely critical, building the right relationships with our third parties. They're the ones that are out there. They're the ones in the cafeteria. They're the ones, doing the landscaping, and they're always an extension of the internal corporate real estate team. So, wherever I've been, using words like we and talking about the broader team is always super important. So, and I don't think that's breaking news to anybody that's listening, right? That's always been a key thing. But I think that the shift I'm seeing is that we're depending on those partners, more strategically than we have in the past.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in many cases in a more integrated way than we have seen in the past. Bill, can you expand on that?
Yeah, so we're similar to how Adam is. We're essentially fully outsourced at Bank of America. We rely on our service providers to do everything on the execution front, whether it's FM or transactions or occupancy planning. They are involved in everything we do, and they are critical to getting things accomplished.
Terry, when you think about the qualities that make a true strategic partner, I know you've been going through probably a year-long really transformation with your service provider and working through a lot of these concepts. What do you think of? What are those qualities that go, beyond meeting the basic expectations of SOWs or SLAs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a ticket to the game, right? Is meeting those, and it's when they truly go beyond that, right? And there are a lot of what I consider key qualities or elements that I hope come naturally to them, right? We always talk about reactive work, but I'm looking for a partner that really is proactive in solving problems, right? They anticipate the challenges and they propose innovative ideas before the problem happens, right? Always looking for continuous improvement, right? Sometimes we're difficult clients, right? And we're like, oh no, we can't do that. We can't do that. And, what I'm striving to do with my organization is frankly, get out of the way of our strategic partners and let them solve for us. They are the experts, so we need to allow them to do that. So, we're changing our culture as we're anticipating and expecting them to change how they service, Bristol Myers. So continuously improvement. Ensure they're aligned with our business objectives, right? If they don't know where we're trying to go, how are they going to help us get there, right? And so true strategic partners have a seat at the table, right? They're having conversations with us. We're having conversations with them. So we're aligned with goals and objectives. And then we talked a lot about data, right? So, stop that, oh, it looks like this, but truly enable them to put whatever technology needs to be put in place to make data-driven decisions, right? To truly look at how is our portfolio running, whatever it is, and ensure we enable those decisions to be made from a perspective of data. A couple other things, flexibility and adaptability. We're all changing. We certainly are going through a lot in my organization. So we need that flexibility and that adaptability to change. Collaboration and communication, right? I'm a proponent of communication, right? If we don't talk to each other, we're not going to survive, right? And nobody sits in a corner and doesn't have a voice at the table. But not only have that voice, but also listen to them. They're the experts. So ensure, I'm not sure if Adam or Bill said it, but they are our boots on the ground, right? They see and hear much more than I do, frankly. And they come to me, I'm like, I didn't know that. And so we have to be able to have strong communication skills on both sides in collaboration. And then help us understand the risk and manage the risk, right? We need to ensure business continuity and compliance, certainly in my business. And so that is a critical factor in a good strategic partner.
Yeah, so to that, several of you use multiple strategic partners, whether it's functionally or across different, geographical regions. And Bill, we'll start with you, but happy for Adam or Faye to jump in as well. How does that change or further complicate the qualities that are needed, or how the service providers are really helping you to drive strategy? Does that impact the way you have to communicate with them, the way they're working together with each other?
It doesn't really change too much on our what my job, because we work with one. So my region works with one service provider. So it's pretty straightforward, and there's not a whole lot of crossover. So that, I think, helps. When it becomes more crossover, it starts to get a little bit more complicated. It takes away from any finger pointing. There's accountability when it's like that. When one region and one service provider manages one region, I think it goes a long ways to ensure who's responsible and accountable to get the job done in that region.
And you have some sharing of technology between.
Yep. So technology will go across the entire globe. So that is one, and we've been doing it long enough that it seems pretty smooth and streamlined, that we kind of work out all the kinks, and it's not really noticed that there's multiple service providers in the mix.
Faye, happy for you to touch on that as well, and also would love to hear from you around your existing delivery model and if that's, changed over the recent years and why or why not.
Well, and I guess I'd say first of all that we're a regionally organized organization, but we are globally centered when it comes to our outsourcing. So we tend to each of the lines of service like FM and real estate, we have for a number of years pursued a global platform with service providers. And some of that is to do with the ease of governance, the aggregation, the insights, the data sharing across the regions. So we're really leveraging our service providers' platforms, sort of bring the story together across the globe, across those lines of business. And we've moved in and out of partnerships, competitive landscape, lots of partners. More recently, we've skinnied that down, but we are always in the business of having the best partner at the table. So, I think that's our focus. So we want the best expertise, the platforms. And I think Adam said it earlier with AI, we're all looking for, what's that next big move, both from the client side, but what are the big moves that the service providers are going to make that could again be a changing landscape for our strategies.
Right. So Terry, you also have had some significant shifts in your delivery model. Do you want to talk a little bit about those changes as well?
Yeah, and we have two providers, one for North America and one for Europe. And as we shifted the North America model into really an outcome-based, truly a strategic partnership. We told them how to do everything previously, and so we drifted away from, which is the right answer, into allowing them to operate how they provide services to us. As we embark on looking at a relationship in Europe, I do anticipate keeping, this is not public knowledge, but anticipate probably keeping two partners. However, ensuring that I get consistency delivery for governance, right? Faye said it. We don't want to have 10 different ways to govern, right? I just don't have a big enough team, and I'm sure none of you do either. And so where we can drive consistency through the partners, right? I'm doing that. Where you can drive technology through the partners and expectations, I'm doing that. Where you can drive governance, where you can drive compliance, all of those things are standardized, whether I have 1 or 10 partners. And I think sounds like a lot what Faye does as well. And that's, again, I've got to drive that consistency and that accountability. And I don't want to do it 10 different ways, right? And so from a global governance, there are many times, and the partners are very amenable to meeting together, right? And having those best practices conversations, right? And we get them all on one call, and it's like, well, you know what? So-and-so, you do this much better. I like this platform. And so now everybody has to do it. So really driving consistency, but maintaining different partners is working out very well for me.
Adam, as you listen to everything here, and feel free to expand or share your thoughts as well. But I'd love to hear, what is one thing or things that you wish your service provider partners, existing or in the past, would do more or less of? What do you think the focus should be on for the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. Probably hard to say what maybe one thing, but I'll try to keep it down. But maybe just to go back to what the group was saying, I think it's an interesting topic. I don't think there's not one right answer, right? I think we've all operated with a few number of partners. We've operated with a large number of partners. You look across FM real estate projects, everything else we do. I think it comes down, and Ingrid, your company, I think, is helping a lot of us in this, right? It's about governance. It's about setting up ways of working so that you're clear on what the expectations and what the outcomes are. So if you have one global partner for everything, cool. You've got a governance framework to manage that. If you have multiple, regionally, by pillar, whatever it might be, it's about how we operate, how we work together as one team. And I think, in a lot of cases, we can take advantage of a small number of providers, but making sure we have expertise in those service lines in different parts of the world. Because as we know, not every company is good at FM real estate projects across every market across the world. So I think it's a lot about how we govern and how we look at those types of things. So what I wish I get more of or less of, that's a great question, Ingrid. I'd say, first of all, I've enjoyed really good relationships and partnerships with providers in the industry. I think the one thing that I've given them feedback on over the years is I don't think we as occupiers get enough proactive support from their portfolio and their central teams, right? I think, you go into a new relationship and during the bid, it's, here's what our platforms can do. And a lot of times it's almost like pulling teeth to get those resources to come to your account. So I've been very open with the companies I've worked with. I don't really want to have to pull those resources onto my account. I want to see more of that show up just in the natural flow of what we do. So that would be one. Second thing would be, I don't know if our not current, just the global, view is, I don't know if providers are as proactive as they can be with the data that they own, right? So a lot of times we give our partners all of our data, and I've seen some examples of where they proactively come with ideas with the data, but a lot of times, my expectation is, hey, you've got our data, bring ideas to us with the data that you have. And I'm not sure we see enough of that. So there's some examples on both sides, but those would be the two things that I would say I think occupiers can use more of across the board.
Yeah, and I think, well, both, but the second one, so much opportunity. And as we talk about AI, I have a lot of hope that opens up avenues that support, because if you look at the way financials are managed across, even within an existing service provider, across multiple different client accounts, it can look very different. And so that doesn't enable us to share those best practices, those insights in a consistent way.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a real opportunity for AI. And I know a lot of the service providers are seeking to solve for that, for sure. Faye, can you add to this? What are your thoughts on things you think the service providers could do more of or less of?
Well, plus one on Adam's, but maybe just to expand a little on the data. I think we are swimming in data, but we're hungry for insights. So I think that's really what, there is now a ton of data. So what do we do with it? How do we make sense of it? What to pay attention to? How is it going to help us drive better decisions, but get greater value? So, and I think we're all hopeful, or AI is going to be the thing that's going to help us solve for that. So I think, and we are looking for the service providers to take a leading role in that. I wanted to go back to something Adam said earlier about involving our service provider, and I think everyone said it, involving the service providers in the strategy. So I'll start with that. I think I would have said a few months ago, well, maybe that wasn't going as well for us as we would like. I actually think what has happened is we have been more direct and more clear with our service providers about our strategy. And with that insight and understanding what our business goals and so on, they have been a lot more proactive at finding ways to lean in, support us differently. So I think maybe I'll encourage everyone who's kind of listening in is that seat at the table, it's a two-way conversation, but I think it's still on the client to kind of create that business strategy, line of sight of what we're trying to accomplish, find the ways to drive a better conversation. So with that, maybe the one thing I would say, and I'm going to put it this way, tell us when our baby is ugly, because we don't have all the answers. I don't think anyone on this call would say they've got everything solved and that every strategy is the right one. So I would continue to encourage our partners to, please speak up when it doesn't make sense, when it's, yes, I could do it, but I'm going to create an enormous factory of work and I'm not sure you're going to get value from it. I would continue to encourage all of the service providers in the ecosystem to bring that challenge.
Yeah, I think that's such a really good point. And it can be really oftentimes difficult, I think, for service providers to navigate client to client where that line is. But if you as a client are embracing the fact that you really are hiring them to bring you that expertise, to bring you that new way of thinking, there is a lot in the psychology of feeling safe to be able to do that and the effectiveness of it. So I think that's a really good point. So we talked a lot about partnerships and how they are much more effective if they're strategically aligned, right? If goals and objectives are clearly understood. And, Adam, you touched on, they're also about delivering measurable results, and they're also about data, right? And so in today's environment, and I think it always has been, but cost pressures are certainly a constant, which really makes the question of financial optimization more important, right? And as we explore how we think about creating value while managing spend, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. So Terry, with ongoing cost pressures, and I know that's always front of mind in an environment that you manage within, where are you finding opportunities to optimize spend and really without sacrificing the quality that's so important?
Yeah, that's that balance, right? And we have embarked on a journey, the whole organization, in looking at the how we do everything, right? And really trying to lean out where we can, right? Reduce or eliminate non-value activities, right? And this is driven through our vendor partners as well. It is something that's critical for us in the pharmaceutical world, right? We've got tranches that we hit at times. And so with that, we've got to be able to have everybody focus on what their responsibilities and accountabilities are, and reduce the redundancies. I don't know about you, but there are times it's like, why are we 3 people doing that, right? Have one person. So clear accountability, clear roles and responsibilities, and truly understanding how we accomplish the task, the strategy, the goal, and ensure everybody's aligned with it and there's no duplication. So truly, I know that we have spent a lot of time in the last 10 plus years, as we've outsourced to our service providers, focusing so much on cost, right? Lower the bottom line, find glide paths, do all of the I'm not say easy work, because none of it's easy, but kind of that low hanging fruit, that type of thing. This strategy is about driving efficiencies, right? Driving the redundancies out, driving consistency across our portfolio, which will then equate to reduction in dollars, right? And I think Faye said it quite well. We've got an abundance amount of data. We need to use it. We need to understand where our costs are. Are we just doing PMs because it says it's time to do a PM? Well, that's money out the door, right? We have to stop doing that. I think Adam brought it up earlier. I'm not aware of any service provider that's perfected that, right? We all talk about predictive maintenance and all of that, but do we really ever get there? And so I'm driving that through our organization to truly do the work that needs to be done, but no more. And to us, that equates to a reduction in cost.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes to the balance of mitigating risk and effectively relinquishing control so that decisions can be made in a more efficient and effective way. And that's, I think, something, inherently all companies are struggling with, right? What is the right balance, and where do you enable your partners or not enable your partners to really do the things that they need to do for you? So I think that's a really great point. Bill, anything else to add here?
Yeah, I would say on the execution side, construction cost is something that it's top of mind. It's a big focus kind of monitor, because certain markets there's some softness, and other markets there's no softness, and it's very, very expensive, right? And it really impacts what we can do in each of these projects and each of our strategies. But ways to save money, and we've realized in the last year or so, we've spent a significant amount of time, much more time on the design process, to really design what's needed, what's required. Is there different ways to do it, and exhaust all options to build the right thing and not lose on the employee experience, but spend our money wisely. And we found some significant savings, whether it's leaving walls in place or value engineering to save money and still have an outcome that's really a great outcome for the employees.
So Faye, when you think about how you measure ROI or business value, I know it does, but can you talk about how it goes beyond just cost per square foot? What are you guys doing?
Well, I would start with, I think it's really cracked the code of how do we get to a point where we can measure productivity, because that's one of the biggest care abouts in the business. Do we have the right portfolio shape and investing in the right places in the right way? So one thing we've been doing recently with our executives is really trying to find a way that they measure success and draw that line between what's important to them, what are the outcomes that they're needing, and then how do we make a correlation between and I'm not going to suggest that we have all of this cracked. This is our work in progress of how we find those business outcome measures where the real estate portfolio, the services and the environments touch on those values, whether that's their talent attraction. One thing I was going to talk about earlier was for Cisco particularly, and probably true for many around the table, the workforce dynamic, the makeup of the workforce has changed significantly. Certainly in Cisco, we're finding in some of our markets, we have more than 50% of our employees are early in career. So again, that sort of bringing people into the organization, creating that sort of cultural adoption, making sure that they've got proximity to leaders for learning and shadowing and so on. So I think we have a heavy play in the talent space, in how do we make sure, whether it's through retention stats or career development or skills development and so on, how do we help leaders better understand how they're performing, what's important. And I think the other areas, for us, R&D is a big play for Cisco. So again, are we creating enough of the spaces and the power and the capacity to allow for the R&D growth in that part of the business? And where we are, and for Cisco, we use some of our locations as a showcase of some of our products and capabilities. So where we're able to draw, the parallel between the revenue that we're driving through the proximity of the location. So how often we're using locations, how often that drives revenue. That's probably the easiest area that we've been able to attach a business value to the value of having corporate real estate available in certain markets. So, and we continue. I think that's going to continue to be a work in progress for us. I think all our leaders that we're talking to are very focused on productivity and learning across teams. So, and I'd love to hear from more on the panel. So as we all develop our thinking in those areas, I think it's a great way for us as peers across the market to share with each other and develop those best practices.
Great. Adam, can you expand on this? I know you guys have been a lot.
Yeah, sure. Maybe just one thought on cost, though, because I thought there were some good points made. I think one of the things I've noticed over the last couple of years is the shift from, not the total shift, but I think we're starting to see a shift around looking at cost per head, more so than cost per square foot, right? I think if you look at the flight to quality, we saw post-COVID companies going into better space because they wanted to make sure that they were bringing employees back to really quality space. I think business cases could be made around your total cost going down, but if you're looking at it on a square foot basis, it might be going up a bit, but going down from a head count per head perspective, which I think enabled some different conversations with business leaders around costs, which I think is important. Bringing people into quality space, but maybe having less space in aggregate across your portfolio. I think Faye made some great points with regard to the non-financial metrics that we look at. I think recruitment, retention, those are things that we always talk about. Tricky thing is, how do you really pull that out of data, right? How much of an employee staying or coming to a company is really around the office space or the work environment? I think definitely we can do that, but I've gotten into debates with business leaders over the course of my career about, what really is the reason somebody's coming or going. But those are definitely things that we can look at, and we can definitely see trends in, recruitment and retention around upgrades in space, or, maybe where we decrease the quality of space. So I think those are definitely key things that we should look at. I agree on the productivity. One of the things that I've looked at, and I think Leisman does a pretty good job of this, is asking employees how productive they feel in their space, rather than just saying how a macro call center type metric to say how productive was the actual space. It's more about how productive people feel in the space. And I think if you think about our roles, it's really setting up our people for success, right? We can't get into their shoes and actually pull the productivity out of them, but we can put them in a spot where we're maximizing the chance that they'll be productive during that given day. So if we look at things like Leisman, where we're asking our people how productive they're feeling across a number of different metrics regarding the space, I think those are key. And to me, using those types of discussion points and data points in broader business cases will be the way that we combine with the ever-present cost metrics that we're using. Those will be the things that we talk about as we're looking at space business cases going forward.
And maybe just Ingrid, just to add on, it's a great point, Adam, with regard to the Leisman data, and we've been using that over the last few years, and I think it's probably the only area where we get a true demographic feel for our employees. It's very hard as corporate real estate professionals to get the inside track from HR on some of those things. Mm-hmm. That's one way the Leisman data is really helping us make a study of all of the different age groups, the different expectations from the workforce, and seeing a little bit further into what's important to them. And that variability, we see the earlier in careers wanting something very different from people that maybe have been in the company a long time or just in a different place in life. So I think we've been doubling down on those non-financial measures. And I think someone said it earlier, that sort of focus on experience. I think, Adam, it was you earlier. I think that's true for all of us now, that it's a combination. It's a cost, it's an asset, but it has a value in terms of that sense of belonging, purpose, and productivity for the employees.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think technology and data are going to just increasingly become more central to decisions and how services are delivered. And I think it's great to hear examples just like this of how you guys are using different aspects and different tools or platforms. If anyone else has anything to share on other ways they're leveraging technology and data, we'd love to hear about that as well.
Well, we are, I think I said it earlier, there is a tremendous amount of data, right, that's out there, that's available. So what, right? It just sits there and nobody does anything with it. So we're really trying to focus on what that data means, looking for trends, looking for opportunities, looking for patterns, so that we take what we know and we do something with it, right? And that's, I think, the key, right? Again, we all have a lot of data, but it sits somewhere, or it sits in 10 different systems. And so I'm driving that data lake, right? And putting the real estate and the facilities and the HR aspects of all that data into a place, right, where we can make data-driven decisions, right? Automate where we can. A lot of times people are afraid of it, right? Or people are going to lose their jobs. I'm going through that experience now, is where we automate things. It's like, well, Ingrid's going to lose her job. Well, no, we'll put Ingrid where she could be, her focus could be more strategy and less operational or less tactical, right? It isn't necessarily about reducing headcount, but having those individuals focus more on a strategy, a relationship, something more value add than, crunching some numbers. So, or, sweeping the floor. So it really is about taking what we know, what we have, and doing something with it is the key point that I'm trying to drive. That's great. So what? So what do we do with it, right? How do we utilize it to make us all better?
So we just have, can't believe we're flying through time. We just have a few more minutes here. And so we talked a lot about strategy, our service providers supporting that strategy, the technology and data that is kind of the foundation to that. And really all of that hinges on having strong governance in place. And Faye, I know most certainly we've done a ton of work and it's very front of mind for you in your position, but how are you thinking about structuring governance to really ensure accountability and drive that continuous improvement and getting the best value from your service providers?
Well, I think, and Ingrid, you know this well, when we started on our journey of how do we reimagine how we do governance, we actually started with measurement. So how could we structure a KPI system and a measurement system that would help us understand performance all the way down to the service level and the building level? And we had previously and had for many years measured at a whole region. So we were measuring FM as a category and all the multifaceted parts of FM, but there was one score, and there was also one chance for the service provider to pass or fail. So I think that starts with, understanding performance at the lowest possible level. I would say probably we're on our journey with our service providers in setting the bar at the right level. We might be too granular right now. It's a lot of work, but we wanted to be able to get that line of sight of performance all the way down to the service building, be able to roll that up to, the country, the region, theatres as we call them, or up to global. And then we take a multi-layered approach on governance, oversight, and performance. So both service provider, local teams, regional teams, into a global team. A lot of the performance measurement is happening at global level. That's all rolled up. But we have sometimes I'll call them the Switzerland department. We have a governance team who are sort of more independent from the local delivery. So we have people responsible for governing the service delivery, the financial management, and the receipt of services. And then a team who are really there to help provide support to both teams. The service providers sometimes need somewhere to come and say this isn't working, or we need some support, or we're having a hard time kind of arriving at a reasonable view of whether things are being performed well. So they support our teams, and I think it provides the service provider with that place to keep it in balance. I think we can't always measure all of our outcomes on a scorecard. There are some intangibles at times or subjective conversations. So I think it's that level of maturity. We keep the conversation going. We have subjective measures as well as objective, and I think in partnership that's working well. I think if I was going to give guidance to anyone, I think we probably have too much in that system, and so I think in our next generation, we'll find a happy medium of what's the right level of engine to drive all of that measurement, and then having a mature and open conversation about what's working, not working, and how did then we move into transformation efforts together. And maybe just the final thing here is we're almost two years into some of our new agreements. We're still running transformation conversations, and that's where we sort of scoop up the new ideas or what could we do next. So we continue to build and grow in the partnership.
Yeah. I love how you talk about that, because I think, a lot of times the focus on governance is just about the KPIs and the measurement side of things, which of course is very important, but in the services relationships that you all have, that we all have in the industry, it's about lots of different people. And so the communication side and really having a platform to be able to grow together and change and be flexible, as we know business is doing, is just as important, right, as getting those kind of like data-driven metrics, right? And Terry, to that point, you've also done a lot of work relating to this and how you think through what success looks like with your partner. Do you have anything else to add?
She said it so well. It's hard to add anything to that. I'm like, so she said everything that I certainly am thinking and working on. The key truly is the communication, right? It should be, it's not a monologue, but a dialogue, right? You've got to be able to have strong communication. Nobody's perfect, and you need to look at a 365. How can we as partners do it better, right? For many, many, many years, we had a stick, right? And we just beat them with it. But you're not going to accomplish anything. Should there be some penalties if they fail? Absolutely. They know it. We know it. I don't think the industry will ever go away from that, but that shouldn't be the number one, right? It is about roles and responsibilities driving accountability, making sure we've really stepped away from telling, and I've said this before, telling them how to do it, right? And say, you must have 10 people and you must, no, here's the outcome. So now we're delivering and they're delivering, and our expectations are an outcome. And so we're measuring those outcomes. And as Faye said, it goes up and down the organization, because you have boots on the ground that have an opinion, right? And then it rolls up. And I, like she, have, a governance group, right, on a global basis. And we are governing the contract, right, and the relationship. But everything that happens at the site is impactful. So it really is about open dialogue, having the right people, again, at the table. I've said that several times. It's just, we can't, we're, I think several people, Adam and Bill, they all said they are an extension of us. They are us. And when we don't talk that way, if we don't present that way to our leaders, to our people, then they think it's an us and them, and it should never be that way. And so governance is a huge part of breaking down that perceived or real, it's a service provider. Well, no, it's not. It's a partner. It's a strategic partner. And as such, we should always call them that. I believe that wholeheartedly, maybe because I came from the service provider side, but and Faye, I love this word, because sometimes we're not reasonable, right? We have to put reasonableness in it, right? And I don't know, Ingrid, after our negotiations we just had, I don't know how many times you maybe heard me say that word, but it's got to be reasonable. It really does. And that means both partners having open, safe space to have dialogue.
That's spot on. So we have just about a minute or two left. And I'd love to hear 30 seconds from each of you as we close, thinking through, what are your perspectives on the challenges that we will be facing in the next 2 to 3 years, or what's the biggest opportunity you see in the industry, or anything you want to share. And Adam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks. I think we've been through a lot of different topics. I think the one thing that we haven't talked too much about is talent in the corporate real estate industry. I think that's huge. I think we're all part of different organizations that focus on talent, but I think we really need to focus on getting young folks coming out of school early in their career into corporate real estate. I think it's, we've all had really good experiences in this space. So I think a key focus needs to be on talent and getting the talent pipeline stocked up for the future.
Very true. Bill?
I would say the biggest opportunity is to be nimble, being able to react, make decisions quickly. If things are going to change quick, we would have to adjust and change along with that.
Great. Terry?
Yeah, it's hard to beat those. I agree with both of them. I think it's about failing fast, right? Don't be afraid. Go in, make it happen. If you fail, move on, right? Because we've got to be agile. We're the pace, I think we talked about at the beginning, the pace of the environments we're all in it seems to be, warp speed. So it's really that agility and that ability to fail fast and move on to the next.
And Faye?
Oh, that's making it tough for me, bringing up behind these wonderful perspectives.
That's for last.
Wonderful perspectives. I think actually I would just add to the opposite end of what Adam was just saying. It's also those, deep expertise, deep SME expertise at the other end of the spectrum that we're still, fostering and growing the subject matter expertise that we are all going to need to be agile, to fail forward, to flex and be adaptable.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for what I think is a really thoughtful and dynamic conversation. And I think the insights that were shared today really highlight how much our industry is evolving and the big opportunities that we have to lead change. And so a special thank you again to each of you for your time and your perspectives, and to everyone else who joined us to hear the conversation. So we look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.